Hey, good morning, everybody, and welcome to Office Hours. I'm Bill Davis, sitting in for Lindsay this morning. We've got an interesting show today. It's a Monday, which means we're going to be doing 2 full hours of Q&A. So thank you all for joining us. We're going to be talking about tech. There might be a few of you straggling in who have never seen Office Hours before. If so, we've been doing this for more than 500 shows every day. And what we do is talk about tech discussions. It started out as kind of for the work at home era, but now it's just for any era. We start about 6 o'clock assembling here on the panel, just generally chatting. And then if you ever want to do this, we encourage anybody who has any sort of technical expertise that wants to join the panel, please come and join us. All you have to do is show up somewhere between 6 and about 6:30 and raise your hand. And then you will come on and do a quick mic check to make sure your audio and video is good. And then you can join us on the panel and kind of participate. 7 a.m. the show starts, and most days we go live on YouTube, as we are today. So hello to the YouTube audience. But the key to Office Hours is this show is entirely driven by you, those of you who are watching. And we do that through a chat system called Mukana. And you will find, if you go into your Zoom chat function, a link to Mukana. Now you have to go over there and kind of register in, but once you do that, you are able to see the Q&A system and you are able to submit questions. Then the key and kind of the magic of the show is that you vote on those questions. You vote them up and down, and the highest rated questions we spend the most time talking about and go into the most depth about. So that's how the show basically works. You drive our agenda. You're welcome to ask any question on any technology subject. And then if your question gets voted up enough, and most days we actually manage to get through almost all the questions. So even if you have a niche question that's not getting a lot of traction, it'll still probably be answered here. But that's how the process works. So your participation in the show is the key to making the show run smoothly. All right, that's enough back end stuff. Liberty is going to be asking questions or reading out the questions today. So we're going to head off to her. Liberty, you want to take it away?
Definitely. Our first question comes from Gordon Lake in Los Angeles, California. Gordon asks, what is a good router to put in a fly pack for location productions? Needs 8 ports or more. Also would like to make it available for remote contribution switching.
Okay, and we've got a little piece of our system not exactly right. We're going to go with physically raised hands, and Noah Sargent has the first one this morning. So go ahead, Noah.
Good morning, everybody. Yeah, I would definitely recommend the PepLink Max HG4. It can do 4 cellular SIM cards and 2 WAN ports, 2 USB. It's quite an expensive device, but it's definitely something that I've used before. You could also connect a switch up to a smaller router if that's something you need to save some money on, but this is definitely something I've used before and would recommend.
Boy, I remember when fly packs were 7 road cases. It's amazing how much smaller things have gotten. So hopefully there's a lot of options for you out there. Let's move on. Next question, I suppose. I don't see any other hands on that one.
All right, our next question comes from Jonas Dattel in Stuttgart, Germany. And he asks, Alex, what do you think of Vimeo adding Dolby Vision? Will they also add it to live?
Well, unfortunately, Alex isn't here, and I'm not going to challenge him or channel him, not challenge. That would be ridiculous. But he knows about as much about Dolby Vision as any of the rest of us here. And I think you're going to probably have to wait for Alex to get back to get some serious thing. Does anybody else on the panel work with Dolby Vision regularly enough to have any opinions on what's happening with it? No, I didn't imagine so. Alex is our resident guru about Dolby Vision, so it's probably a better idea to wait until he comes back tomorrow. So hold on to that question and push it through again tomorrow, and I'm sure you get a great answer. Go ahead, Liberty. Let's go to the next question.
All right, Danny Law in Malaysia says, any headset mic recommendations if all is needed is to get clear audio for Zoom meetings?
Boy, there's so many, and we've talked about them a ton. Let's go to Mickey McAdor.
I'm a huge fan of the Countryman H6. It's relatively affordable at, I believe, $250 and broadcast quality sound.
Absolutely. You know, the great joy of a headset mic is that it puts the capsule literally right next to your mic, your mouth, and then the standard physics of audio and the signal to noise ratio of getting something really close really means that even inexpensive mics can sound pretty darn decent and sometimes really good. For the education folks who don't have a lot of money, it's been a recommendation for a long time. Little microphones that are even in the $20 range, like from Pile and Pulse. And we've recommended those to teachers, and teachers have had a good result with those in terms of clarity of articulation and your audience being able to understand what you're saying. Of course, as you spend more money and get up into the higher ranges, you get a lot more signal to noise ratio, a lot quieter. Nigel, toss in some other ideas on that.
Okay, well, this is the Pile, I think it is, that I got from Amazon, to your point. It's a happy $20. Remember that if you're plugging this into your PC, you're going to need an adapter of some sort that will allow you to connect a 3.5mm jack into a... And when I travel and try and do office hours, this is what I take with me. I'm sure it's nothing as good as the Countryman, but it may just be good enough.
Yeah, most of the time. I mean, a lot of us are speaking on pretty good quality microphones, in some cases, extremely high quality microphones, and they get a bigger range and, again, more signal to noise ratio, so that there's not a lot of extra added sound to what you want the mic to pick up. But sometimes inexpensive things will work. David, do you have some thoughts on this?
I wanted to ask a question. The Countryman and things like it, how are you plugging, what is the interface? How are those plugging into your computer? Is it XLR? Is it 35 mil?
You can get them in almost anything, but Mickey will talk about it.
Yeah, exactly what Bill was saying. Most of these microphones come terminated with different for different systems. It could be XLR, it could be terminated for Shure systems, Sennheiser, Electrosonics. And the same is true with the Pile as well, I believe. There are different wirings that they become available in.
Yeah, that's one of the fun things about audio. Is there's a whole bunch of different terminations. It's common to have these plugged into body packs that you wear on your belt in wireless systems, and those sometimes have TA4Fs or TA5Fs, and some of the even Sennheisers use little mini pin 3.5mm, and then sometimes those are 3-conductor and sometimes they're 2-conductor. Every system is a little bit different. So the smart thing to do is know what you're going to plug it into first, and then order the microphone that connects correctly to that. There are occasionally adapters available, so that if you have an XLR end, you can terminate that into something that will allow you to plug a little Lemo connector or a different kind of connector into that and still get a signal through. So you can adapt a lot of these expensive microphones. That's one of the things about expensive microphones. They tend to be a little more adaptable. Sometimes you buy the inexpensive ones and they come with one kind of connector, and that's all you're going to have to use. So you're going to have to figure out how to make that work with your system. All right, let's move on to the next question. Liberty?
Our next question comes from Chris Taylor in Carlsbad, California. Is there a light controller or app that a user could manually multiply Neewer or NAN lights? If so, would all the lights need to be the same brand?
Ooh, does anybody? Boy, I wish we had Talak here. Oh, good. Alan Davis will take a shot at it, and so will Ken. DMX is coming, I think.
Yeah, and there is DMX. If they are DMX controllable, there are numerous Android apps you can get, or iOS apps. Once you get you need a bit of hardware interface here, but there are a new number of them. Can I get my screen showing? So this is one that I haven't used, but I know some colleagues have. There's a Eurolight one.
Screen's blurred out.
Oh, is it? Oh, I apologise. It's not going to be able to come through then. Eurolight do one, and then there's also a app. And I will put it in Mukana. And so there's a program that someone's wrote which links up Neewer lights for Mac, and then you can interact them. I'll stick them in Discord so everybody can see. But there are the numerous ones. They don't have to be the same brand as long as they communicate with DMX. And if they're ones that are app based, Neewer and Nanlite both have a companion app which will be able to link them together, and I'll add it in.
Let's go on to Ken Jordan and then Jeffrey Powers. Go ahead, Ken. Whoops, Ken, you're muted or something. Yes, you're Zoom muted.
That's my fault. Yeah, sorry about that. I use there's two ranges. There's Aperture, which is what you see. This is the interface here for Aperture for my Aperture lights. This has by far, I think, the best app control for lights, and the other model range is the Godox, they also make a very good app. But yes, in those cases, you do need to be on the same brand to keep the control for the app.
Jeffrey?
So I can speak on the Neewer stuff. Neewer is a lot of times it's either Bluetooth or it's not. So, like for instance, I have two panel lights that are right above me, and both of those panel lights are they were before any type of connection like that. So I have them on a power strip that I can control via my Echo and go from there. If you get anything else Bluetooth related, you'll have to get some sort of Bluetooth converter that will go into an automated system. And there are, from what everybody's talked about before, you should be able to get it go. But I don't think there's not going to be a direct DMX solution with lights like Neewer.
Absolutely. Okay. I think we've covered that reasonably well. Let's move on to Liberty White.
Next, we have David Brady, our friend in New York. He asks, what are the risks associated with port forwarding access to a device like a Raspberry Pi versus establishing a VPN looking to provide access for non-technical persons?
Okay, I'm going to be, Mickey already has his hand up. I was going to be tap dancing and tell Mickey or Peter or some of our other network guys, but Mickey, take it away.
Okay, the thing with doing port forwarding is that you're essentially punching holes in your firewall, and that hole goes directly to a specific device on your network. And if someone knows your IP address, that person could very easily sniff out available open ports in your firewall and tunnel into that device. So it's not out of the norm to do port forwarding, but just make sure that when you don't need that port open, that you close it down.
So it's a security violation the moment you do it, and so you should think about that, I guess. Who else had a hand up? Somebody else had a hand up. Rupert McRae is up there now.
So the beauty of the VPN side of the question is the kind of clues in the name, virtual private network. That gives you a secure tunnel to whatever your two ends are. And that means that anything you put through it will be inherently encrypted. Now, if you do the port forwarding route, like Mickey said, you're essentially opening ports to the outside world. Now, you can lock that down with access control lists and things like that, but then you're completely reliant on the protocol itself that you're using for any type of security. Now, if that's a protocol that sends its communication or its instructions in the clear, essentially unencrypted, then that traffic, those commands or whatever that data is that you're passing, whether it's control or actual data, is passing from end to end, what they call in the clear, which means if you could get in the middle of that, you could just sniff that traffic out and read it basically in plain text. So a VPN mitigates that by just encrypting everything that goes along that path.
Would you say that almost everybody should have, at least in their back pocket, a VPN ready to spin up? And
well, VPNs come in all shapes and sizes. That's the thing. It's difficult to just call something a VPN. People have point-to-point VPNs through hardware, site to site. Other people have VPNs into a cloud service. From a client perspective, it's definitely useful to be able to implement one, but how you implemented it and the exact model can vary on all kinds of different things.
So it's maybe useful for more than just watching a football game out of your market.
Exactly.
Okay, fair enough. Let's move on. Liberty?
California.
Oops.
Am I? Oh.
Yep, your video went off and your audio is now here, but I can't see you.
Okay, looks like it's going to be a morning of... Here we go. I am back and it's going to come in. But since you can hear me, Noah Sargent from Fullerton, California asks, have you heard about any events or live streams from companies previously planning on NAB?
That's going to be, for those of you who don't understand the NAB thing, this is a trade show that's been going on for a long time, National Association of Broadcasters. It's been going for 40, 50 years. And it is where normally a lot of the big announcements in our industries for new gear show up. And of course, they canceled last year. They pushed it back to October, and now they've canceled it again because of the COVID issues. So everybody's kind of wondering what's going to happen. Jeffrey, your thoughts on it?
So technically, NAB didn't cancel; they just pushed it back to next year, and they didn't do anything with their Amplify, which really confused me a little bit. As for other companies, there have been a couple other companies that have sent out email. I have a couple I can't talk about. I'm under NDA for that. They're going to be doing some stuff in the next couple days, and then of course it'll release next week. But nothing really big to talk about for events that I've seen.
Yeah, do search out though if you're feeling a lack of information, because this time of the year and in April when the big NAB used to happen, there was always a flood of information. People made buying decisions and a whole bunch of other things based on what they saw or heard about in the weeks around NAB. Future Media Concepts are the people who have always put on the training sessions, at least for the last very many years. And they've had hundreds of training sessions every year at NAB because everybody was traveling to Las Vegas. So it was a great time for people to get certifications and just study things, improve your skill set for your job. I know they are virtualizing some of that stuff, but I as well have not seen a lot of promotion from them. They do other conferences other than NAB. But you might want to look at their website, Future Media Concepts, and see if some of the things that you might have learned about from NAB are in endeavors that they're doing online. Outside of that, I just don't think it's the same this year, and we haven't heard a lot of press releases coming out. Here on Office Hours, Alex has been talking about the most interesting things that come out that were planned all year long for NAB being subjects of our discussion here, and having more and more special second hours about some of those things. So if you'd like to see some of these topics talked about specifically, put him in the Q&A or put him in some sort of communication to us, and Alex may turn out to agree with you and want to do a second hour on a particular topic that you might have researched in NAB otherwise. All right, all that said, let's go on to the next question.
Our next question comes from Chris Taylor in Carlsbad, California. A client wants to use a BlackMagic Pocket or Cinema 4K for his main camera for an online yoga studio. Any recommendations on a lens that will be able to get full body yoga shot and also some close-ups?
Well, if you're going to do both at the same time, you're talking zoom lenses, but let's let Mickey start, and then we'll go to Rotem.
I would go to my default of the holy trinity of Canon lenses, which is the 16-35, 24-70, and 70-200, all 2.8L lenses. Since the 4K is a micro four thirds, I would probably, if you only could get two lenses, I would stick to the wider side of things. So 16-35 and also the 24-70.
So let's go to Rotem and then Stuart. Go ahead, Rotem.
So micro four thirds, Panasonic have the 12-35, 2.8, great lens. Use it on my 4K cinema, pocket cinema. They also, I forgot like the numbers. I think it's 50-100, 2.8, but I don't remember. They got another like high fast zoom lens, and this will be like good pair.
Fair enough. Stuart.
Any decent lens in the 12 to 40 millimeter range would do, but the Sigma 1835 would be the standout because it is designed for doing the wide angle and the close up for that sort of size sensor. I should point out that Noah and Rotem both had their hands up in the panel view. So I should probably throw to Noah next for an answer.
Go ahead.
Oh, thanks, Bill. No worries. Yeah, so there's a couple different things that I would definitely recommend. The first thing is like taking a step back and looking at the bigger picture. If you need wides and tights, maybe you should introduce an ATEM Mini and switch between two cameras, if that's a possibility. I would go ahead and look at lens choices here. Oh, excuse me. So we saw the PEP Wave. So this is definitely on the expensive side, but this 1880 has a servo zoom, which allows you to zoom in smoothly, right? So you can go wide or tight. Obviously, it's a little pricey. Working our way down here, we have this adapter. It's called the PZE1, and this actually pairs with a cheaper lens, which is this 18-135. You don't have the same f-stop range here. As you zoom in, your f-stop goes down essentially. So this is all for EF, and with that pocket camera, you do have either EF or MFT mounts. So it's going to depend on which mount you have. So like I said, this would be for EF, but if you have the MFT and you're trying to save on a budget, this 14 to 42 mil will probably get the job done. And those are my recommendations.
Nice. Nigel?
Yeah, if you're going to attach an ATEM, then you should look at which lenses you can actually operate from the ATEM. And I've put in the Meccana chat a link to a Blackmagic forum that lists 4 lenses. I don't know if they're all still available, that you can actually operate on your Blackmagic Cinema Micro Four Thirds and actually use the ATEM software to operate zoom and focus.
Excellent answers all the way around. I'm going to add another little thing, which is just remember, if you're in a yoga studio circumstance, you may have one demonstrator, you may have a multiple. I mean, we see a lot of those exercise and yoga things where they try to put out a calm atmosphere and they have 3 or 4 people in front of the camera. You also have the option to just move the camera to get one shot and move it. I heartily recommend what Noah said about if you can grab a second camera. Was it Noah or somebody else? Somebody mentioned having 2 cameras available so that you can have one moving to a shot, a close-up of a hand position or a body position or something like that, while the other one, carefully plotted not to get in the way of the other shot, has a wider shot or is on another participant if you have multiple participants. The whole point of yoga, as I understand it, unless you're doing some sort of hot yoga, is calmness and fluidity. So this is one of those circumstances where to be able to softly dissolve between cameras might add a lot to the look of a show devoted to that. So I would recommend a couple of cameras, and that way you don't have to have one lens that's doing everything. If that's all you can do, there are lenses that'll do the job, and you should be able to be good to go regardless. Let's move on to the next question.
Our next question comes from Nick Pavlinek in Southeast Michigan, asking for a friend doing at-home customer service. She needs a USB headset below $100 that has real good off-access noise reduction.
We should have all sorts of. Mickey will come up with some choices for you. Here you go, Mickey.
So yeah, I would recommend the Polson headset that's been popular in this community. I much prefer the Polson over the Pile, and pair that with one of those affordable USB sound cards, similar to what Nigel showed earlier, like the Tech Rise.
Yeah, the positioning of the microphone, inexpensive microphones can do really good on a headset because they are so close. Everybody talks when you're learning about microphones about the inverse square law, the fact that if you move one from 10 inches away to 1 inch away from your mouth, the signal to noise ratio improves by not a factor of 10, but by a factor of 100. It's 10 squared because you've gone from 10 inches to 1 inch. That works with feet, meters, and everything else. So closeness is a key to getting good quality sound without a lot of background noise. And any headset mic will do a pretty good job in that. As you spend more money on better and better headset mics, you get fuller, richer sound. You particularly get usually more low end, which is hard to do on those really small capsules unless they're really well engineered. But those are it's the physics of sound, and close is always better than far if you don't want room sound to be a part of your mix. Let's continue to move on. Next question.
Our next one comes from James Brooks in New York, looking for any suggestions on a laptop to handle streaming and encoding with OBS at various remote locations. Other hardware will be an ATEM with 3 cameras, or is there a way I can route OBS back into the ATEM for it to stream? Thank you.
All right, we're going to start with Stuart, then go to Noah and Rotem. Go ahead, Stuart.
Wow, I get to unmute the microphone. And I think I ticked an answer to another question, and it's carried over there. So I'm going to pass on to Noah.
No problem. Noah's up.
No worries. Yeah, so I would firstly look into the M1 MacBook Pro. Obviously, there's supposed to be an event sometime this month, maybe next month, about the next M1X. I know a lot of people have had mixed results with OBS on Mac, but so far on my M1, I've had pretty good success using that. Moving on to the ATEM hardware, 3 cameras, it's all great. You can route OBS sort of back through an HDMI out of that M1, and that's how I would get it back into the ATEM. But the real question is, if you can stream from OBS, why not just stream from there instead of the ATEM? Obviously you can go either way, but maybe look at that instead.
Rotem.
So my answer, don't use OBS on a live stream unless you're like playing around with it. Like if it's paid gig, don't use OBS, use the ATEM as a streaming code. If you need to bring like a remote, go to the OBS, but try not to do it. And if you need like a computer to do a live stream with the ATEM, and I'm a Windows user, buy a Mac.
There you go. Next up is Peter Sargent.
I was about to say one of the things I've learned is use the ATEM to do the streaming when at all possible. And I'm running I'm running a Mac Pro, and I can easily handle the CPU load. I can't handle the software outages that occur when I try and use OBS. That's the problem. And yes, you can route from actually any PC, as long as it has an HDMI output. You can tell your application, whether it's Mimo Live, OBS, vMix, to route to its screen output to a specific display, and then that display looks like an input to the ATEM, and you send it out streaming that way.
Jeffrey Powers.
If you do a screen output, make sure that you turn off the audio, or else you'll have a lot of loopback and feedback going on. And the other thing that you want to keep into account is your laptop, the type of processor that's in your laptop, how much memory is in your laptop, how much hard drive space, and of course making sure that it's got power in it. Because if you're running minimum specs on your laptop, doing anything more than bringing in the video is probably going to tax your computer, and you'll probably end up having a lot of problems.
Moving to David Paskin.
I'm running an M1 16 gig MacBook Pro right now, and I use Ecamm Live, so I'm not an OBS user, but I've never had a problem with it. I've been using it multiple hours a day for many, many days, and it's just fantastic.
Okay, well, let's move on to the next question. We seem to have covered that pretty well.
Great job, all. James Brooks is back with, do you think Blackmagic will come out with a PTZ camera that color and focus can be controlled via the ATEM, similar to their camera line? Thank you.
Let's go to Stuart.
Actually, I don't think they will. I think if they're going to come out with a piece of hardware, they'll come out with a pan tilt head that works with one of their current cameras. So it'll sit underneath and it'll be an extra. The other thing they might do is coordinate with a manufacturer of pan tilt heads to actually be able to take out some sort of protocol from the BMD camera into the pan tilt head and control it that way. Having the new Pro version of the studio camera means they've already got Ethernet connections and they've got control connections there. It should be a fairly easy job for them.
Noah Sargent.
That's an interesting point, Stuart. Yeah, I was initially taking the opposite reaction, and I have been looking forward to Blackmagic putting out some sort of PTZ for a number of years, just like I've been waiting for their 2ME upgrade for a number of years. So it's kind of one of those things is there are several product lineups that Blackmagic can expand into. It's a matter of, research time, development, all those things. The rumor on the street right now is about the lens, right? The servo zoom lens for MFT for their new studio cameras. So to Stuart's point, it would be interesting if there was a PTZ head combo that came, but I would also absolutely love a PTZ camera.
All right, well, it's time to move on. Next question.
Sean Moore in Miami, Florida asks, hi, any thoughts on NAS versus a more robust server for marketing/video companies, in-house editors, and have the ability to remotely connect to it? NAS seems popular, but seems when getting into the petabyte of storage, a server would be better.
Let's go ahead and start with Rotem Kish, then go to Mickey after that. Rotem?
So for multiple users, I wouldn't recommend NAS for editing. If it's for light work marketing, you need to move like PDFs and I don't know what, NAS will be great. I worked at a company, we did like seven people on a NAS. Synology was great. But if you're trying to bring multiple editor to edit from a NAS, don't do it. Go to the heavy stuff.
Mickey.
Yeah, I think there might be a confusion in terms of terminology because a a storage server that has a storage that is accessible via the network is a NAS. So even if you build your own or buy a larger one from buy one from pre-made from a manufacturer like Dell, it's still a NAS. It's still a network attached storage. If you go, I would say that if you need to go above 16 drive bays, that's when I would start to consider building my own. I like the chassis that come with a motherboard from companies like Supermicro, and also if you want to pick the motherboard yourself, I like the chassis from Inwin.
Okay. I'm a video editor by kind of trade. That's one of the things that I do most of my time. And there's been this debate. It's gone on for a long time about the process of multiple editors being able to touch a single project. It is not a simple thing. There are traditional systems like Avid who has a lot of strategies like bin locking to enable other people than a single editor to be able to touch parts of a project. Generally, the holy grail of being able to put a project on a server and have multiple incoming editors control various parts of it just doesn't exist. At least I haven't seen it yet. We're getting closer and closer as everything moves into the cloud, the cloud, excuse me. But in the past, up until at least very recently, there were specialist companies who did really low latency so an editor wouldn't get bogged down by the fact that commands are going back to a central server, then coming back to that editor. Editors are a little bit like piano players in that sense. The more fluid it is, the more productive you are, because you stop thinking about operations and just kind of do them in the back of your mind. And anything that adds latency in terms of writing to and reading from a server tends to interrupt that creative flow. So we don't like it a lot, which is why most of the time I've seen it more from a server, getting a file onto your computer, working locally, and then sending it back. And if you have more than one particularly department, if you have the sound guys working on the same file that you're working on, at some point you have to merge those two decision lists that have just taken place in two different creative shops into a master project, which can be its own issue. So this idea of connecting everybody in editing to a big central server is just not as easy as some people kind of make it out to be. So I just say do a lot of research, talk to other editors, find out what they're doing, and if that's what you're going to be doing, remote marketing with in-house editors, and all of them need to connect to your NAS or your Jellyfish or whatever the specialist server you have in the middle of that. Just make sure that it's going to work the way you want it to work, and that means ask a lot of questions, because it's a big lift to have multiple people changing files in a central location, at least complex files like video and audio editing. Let's go ahead and move on to the next question.
We have Tim Hopper from Raleigh, North Carolina. He asked, can I share a USB microphone connected to my Mac with a computer or another network?
So one USB microphone to two computers, is that what I'm understanding? Mickey, can you untangle this for us?
Yeah, if you have actual like physical access to the separate network, I would recommend if you have another NIC on both machines or another NIC on the other machine, you can use the Dante Avio adapters and use loopback to do the routing between those two devices.
So would it be like my microphone talking to recording on two separate computers through some sort of connection through the internet? I'm talking to one computer now, recording there, and now I'm going to go over and record stuff on another computer.
Since I'm assuming that the other network is one that is located physically in the same facility, because Dante will not work over the internet. If you need to do it over the internet, you could use a tool like Unity Connect to bridge audio between two distant networks.
Yeah, it's interesting. I've never thought about that. The circumstance I always use is you're doing a voiceover into a local file, then you're just sending the file over to whatever computers, and that's just super simple. But if you want to just really switch it over and do one voice booth to 5 stations, I don't know what kind of switch would look like to do that. It's an interesting question, so think about it a little. Let's move on to the next question.
I
All
had
right.
an answer.
Bill,
on that.
there's two more answers for that previous question.
See, now they're not refreshing on my screen. I now see Jeffrey and Stuart, but they just
Oh,
came
okay.
up. So there's a little delay there. So Jeffrey Powers, come into it.
Yeah, simply you can use OBS. OBS, just don't use the video part of OBS, and then you can send that out via virtual. You can also use NDI. NDI will allow you to do this. It has to, once again, as Mickey said, it has to be on the same network unless you're VPNing into the other computer. But if you have to go across the network, it can happen. You can use it that way.
Good. And Stuart Fairweather is also in line.
Now I have to make my mic work to answer a mic question. I would use the simplest way that I could think of, which would be open a Video Ninja window on the Mac and just use the USB microphone as the source microphone for a Video Ninja send. Email somebody the link, they open it at the other end, and just send them the audio without any video at all. And it looks like Noah raised his hand, and we'll see if that refreshes for you. But
There it is, just popped up. Noah's there. Good.
Yeah,
Noah, go ahead.
just only a comment. So Tim just put in the chat over a network, not on a network. Facepalm.
Oh, okay. So they want to actually do live VO across a network to multiple stations. Interesting.
yeah, in that case for Tim, the Video Network or Video Ninja one will work both over the network and over the internet.
There you go. All right, Liberty, let's move to the next up.
Paul, I'm going to apologize in advance. So I think it's Paul Prusowski.
Prusakowski. I know Paul.
Prusakowski. Thank you. Thank you, Bill, for the save. From Gainesville, he asked, I'm finishing up a turnkey remote for a non-technical person. Do you have any recommendations for a discrete in-ear monitor?
Boy, we've had a lot of them that we've talked about here. I'm using right at the moment what's called an N-ear monitor. It's just the letter N-EAR. It's exactly the same as the Bumblebee in-ear monitor. These are not inexpensive, but they're used often as security monitors. The great advantage is that they're very stealthy. Even if I turn my head this way, you can barely see the fact that I have an in-ear monitor in. That's because they come out of that kind of Secret Service world. They are very clear on voices. They are not very good on music because that's not what they're designed for. So for a circumstance like this, it's perfect because I can hear people very clearly. But if I was listening to music, this is not where I would go. A lot of people use a lot of different kinds of things. So I know there are some that are less expensive. These are a couple $100, somewhere between $200 and $300. And there are really inexpensive little earbuds you can use. David, do you have some suggestions for alternatives?
I use the I don't know if it's Me or MEE M6. That's what I'm using right now. And if I had a little more hair, they'd be even more discreet. But they're really nice.
Okay. We talk about it a little bit, and there's I know there's some from Shure, there's some from a lot of companies make these. And in fact, I've even used internet little mono single cable, very inexpensive, like $20 earphones just for monitoring, and they've worked okay. So let's move on to the next question, Liberty. Oh, wait a second. I'm seeing now I'm looking over here. Ken Jordan and then Michael Dorsey after that. So let's go to